Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me for day 8 of the Bible reading plan. I hope you've already read this passage in Matthew 8. We're just going to jump right into it this morning. Yesterday, if you remember, Jesus finished up the Sermon on the Mount, and today in verse 1 it starts with saying, when he came down from the mountain. So Jesus is coming down from the mountain after giving the most famous sermon of all time, and what happens is a leper approaches him. And if you know anything about a leper, in the first century, if someone had leprosy, they were supposed to be secluded from all people. They weren't supposed to come near you, because what leprosy was, it was a skin disease that ate away at your flesh, ate away at your body parts. You know, it might take your nose or your fingers or your hands. It was a deadly disease, and it was very vulgar, very disgusting, and it was thought to be highly contagious. So if a man was the second a man was diagnosed with leprosy, they would be shunned from all of society. They weren't allowed to hug their wife or hug their children anymore. They had to go away from all of that and be secluded. So it was crazy that a leper came up to this man. It came up to Christ, and he says, Lord, if you will, if it's your will, you can make me clean. And we see his faith there. He says, I know that if it's your will, you can make me clean. And Jesus, his heart's moved towards him, and he stretches out his hand and touches the leper. And it's just crazy because no one would think to touch the leper. No one except Christ gets into the mess that you are in with you and pulls you out of it. No one does, but Christ went, and he went to the man, he touched him, he healed him. And we see that the man had lost everything before he found his true life. And that's kind of the theme of this chapter, is it takes losing, sometimes it takes losing everything to really gain the world, gain Christ. And as we continue, and centurion walks up to him, and centurion is a Roman member of the Roman legion that is over 100 soldiers, and his servant is sick, and he wants Christ to heal him. And he goes up to Jesus and he says, I would like you to heal my servant. And Jesus says, okay, let's go to him. And in verse 7, he says, no, like, I'm not even worthy to have you come under my roof, and I have faith that you can heal him here. And Jesus looks at him and says he marvels. And it just made me think, does Jesus marvel at my faith? Does Jesus marvel at your faith? Because that's the only time we see Jesus like marveling at someone's faith. And he says, truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. And that's just a crazy thing to say, especially to a Roman centurion, a member of the Roman army. You would think it might be a Jew or one of his disciples, but he looked at a Roman centurion and said, I've never found such faith in Israel. And as I look at that story, Jesus says, let it be done for you as you have believed. So as by your faith, your servant has been healed. And I look at this story, and it's fascinating to me because you have to see the centurion. Firstly, he says, I'm not worthy for you to even come in my house. And what it took for his servant to be saved was a denial of his life, a denial of his old life. He's saying, my life isn't even worthy enough for you to come in it. No, don't even approach my life. It's not worthy enough. He said he forsakes it. He denies it in order to receive the healing that Jesus is offering. And it's by his faith and the denial of his old life that he receives that miracle from Christ. And it kind of, you see these parallels with the leper. He had lost everything, and it took losing everything for him to realize his desperation. What he truly needed was Jesus. And sometimes in our world right now, in our time, we have so much. We're so rich. This is the richest country in the world. We're so blessed. And it's hard for us to see desperation. It's hard for us to realize our need for Christ when we have all of these awesome things. But in a way, it was a blessing that this leper had everything stripped from him so he could see what he truly needed in Christ. And likewise, the centurion had forsaken what he already had. And then, so we continue, and it kind of culminates in verses 18. It says, when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, Teacher, I'll follow you wherever you go. You see, that's the attitude you would think Jesus is looking for, right? I'll follow you everywhere you go. I'll give up my life. But Jesus replies, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He says, he looks at the man, he lovingly, he says, you want to follow me everywhere you go, but are you willing to deny everything? Are you willing to let go of your old life and pick up the life that I'm offering you? And then again, a man comes and he says, Lord, I follow you, but first let me go bury my father. And Jesus says something that sounds really harsh. He says, let the dead bury the dead. But Jesus, and lovingly, this is the hard love of Christ. He says, in me, in my life, you find true life, but you've got to be willing to give up your old life. You've got to be willing to put down the things of the world in order to pick up this beautiful thing that I'm offering. He says, go let the dead bury the dead. I want to make you alive through me, the living way, the truth, the life, the bread of life, all of that. So Jesus is offering us life, but we just have to be willing to let go of what we're holding on in this world to pick up the thing that's better in Christ. And sometimes it takes losing your life and stepping out in faith to actually save your life. And that reminds me of Matthew 16, verse 25. He says, whoever seeks to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for the sake of the kingdom, or for my sake, will save it. And that's the kind of pattern of this chapter, is that whoever loses your life for the sake and for the faith of Jesus Christ, you will be the one to save your life and live eternally in heaven. And then it kind of ends with Jesus on a boat with the disciples, and he's fast asleep, and a storm is raging around them, and they freak out. The disciples are freaked. They think they're going to die, and they run down and say, Jesus, save us. Please, Lord, save us. And he looks at them disappointed, and he says, you of little faith. Like, why are you freaking out? Do you not know what I'm capable, who I am, who you're with? And Jesus rebukes the wind and the sea. And I just want to ask you today, if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, or you're not knowing which way your life will go, there's uncertainty in your life. If you're in Jesus, if you're in the faith of Jesus Christ, do you not know who you're with? Like, do you not know who controls all of these things? Do you not know there's a God out there who loves you, has a plan for you, cares about you? I just want to remind you this morning to have faith, because the one who holds and commands the wind and the seas is there for you. He's wanting to take you in. All it takes is a little faith. And a lot of times it's scary to jump out in that faith, but just remember who your God is. Remember who Christ is and what he did. It takes losing the lesser things to gain the greater. And lastly, I'll finish with this. In verse 15, Jesus enters Peter's house, and his mother-in-law is sick with a fever. And Jesus walks up to her and heals her. And it says she immediately, she rose and began to serve. And for all of you who were once dead, but now you're alive in Christ, you accepted the gift of salvation through Jesus Christ by turning from your old life and picking up the true life that is found in Christ, then use that to serve. That's what you were saved to. You were saved to serve. So get up today to make it your number one effort today to serve one person, to love one person, because you have been loved first. Thank you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.